Alright, so what is going on, everybody, and welcome to today's video. What I want to show you today are the top 5 mistakes that cost me so many deals when I was first starting my marketing agency. And yeah, I just noticed that my introductions are really similar, so I will have to find a way to make them a little bit different from one another. Anyway, talking about discovery calls. First of all, what is a discovery call? That's an amazing question. A discovery call is basically the first call that you have with your prospects. So let's say that you were doing your outreach, maybe it was called emails, or maybe it was LinkedIn messages, Facebook messages, cold calls, whatever. It doesn't really matter. The discovery call is the first call that you have with the prospect. What is the goal? The goal is to really understand what is the problem that your prospect, the prospect is having, and offering a solution to the problem. So let's start with the mistake number 1 that I was making when I was first starting out. So the first mistake that I was making was not doing my homework. What do I mean by not doing my homework? I was not doing any research. I was just jumping on a call and be completely unprepared. I didn't know who the prospect was. I didn't know that many details about their companies, and also I didn't know many details about the prospect. So that is the best way to make a horrendous first impression. So if you want to have a good impression, take some time to do your research. Who is the business? What kind of company is it? Do they have any really big accomplishment? Or who is the person behind the company? Who is the owner? Who are the team members inside the company? Those are really simple things to find out. You can just Google it. You can just go on LinkedIn. You can just go on their website or on their social media channels. And it's really easy, but it will allow you to be really prepared on the first call and to make a good impression, because remember, first impressions matters when it comes down to sales. Tip number two is having a structure, and also having a really strong opener. What do I mean by strong opener? Making sure that you are the leader in the call. You are the authority in the call. That doesn't mean that you need to have a really strict script, not at all. It means that you need to have structure, and it needs to be clear that you are the leader during the call, and your goal is to set clear expectations on how the call is going to go and what will be accomplished during the call. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3, which is probably, by the way, my shoulder is killing me. Tip number 3, which is probably the most important one, is listening. And trust me, when I was first starting out, during the calls, I was just not listening whatsoever to what the other person was saying. I was just so focused on what am I going to say next, that I was completely forgetting about listening to what the actual person was saying. And guess what? If you don't listen, you cannot prescribe a solution. If you don't diagnose the problem, you cannot prescribe a solution to the problem, because you don't know the problem. And that is also another mistake, making assumption. When I was first getting on calls, I thought in my head, I know everything. I know exactly what the other person is looking for. I just have to offer it to him. Just make sure that all the features are incredible and all of that. But the reality is that I had no clue what the actual problem is. And if you make assumption, the sales cycle is going to go completely off track. So always make sure to listen more. How do you listen more? Once again, that's an amazing question. All right, yeah, I just switched the camera because my arm was completely killing me. So the first tip that I have for you is record your sales call, and in the next call that you're going to have, make sure to listen twice as much. Yes, you need to listen. If you don't listen, you will not be able to know what the problem is. You will also be seen as a really selfish individual, because if you're always so focused on what you're going to say next, it's not a conversation anymore. It's just, you're basically just running through a checklist, and the prospect will be aware of it. And this is probably the easiest way to kill a meeting. So tip number 4 that I have for you is make sure that you actually understand what the other person is saying. How do you do that? By briefly summarizing some of the concepts that the other person has said, which basically will allow the prospect to correct you and will allow you to not have any misunderstanding right away. So tip number 4 is actually giving value, and this is so undervalued in my opinion. It's something that in the beginning I was definitely not taking into consideration, but it's also so crucial. The discovery call is a perfect opportunity to show the business owner or to show the other person that you actually care about their business and that you actually want to help them. The entire goal of a discovery call is basically to identify the problem, identify what the desired situation is, and make sure that you are actually the correct vehicle to get them from their current situation to the situation where they want to be. So always try to give value, always try to go above and beyond because the other person will appreciate it so much. And always remember to put yourself in the prospect's shoes. And with that being said, I think that I covered 4 or 5 of the biggest mistake that I was making in the beginning, and I hope that I gave you some really useful suggestions that you can use in your next call. So with that being said, let me know how your future calls are gonna go by sending me a DM on Instagram and by telling me if some of the tips that I gave you today help you out or not. So with that being said, peace out, bye bye.